Welcome to the E-Academy. In this episode, we'll continue with the topic of how the PERFECTA 64M control panel interacts with wireless devices. This time, we'll focus on the ABAX 2 system. Let me start by reminding you that ABAX 2 controllers are connected directly to the bus of the PERFECTA 64M control panel. In addition, a set of dip switches must first be found in the module to be connected. When using the control panel being discussed, switch number 10 should be set to the on position, and switch number 8 on the ACU 220 module we are using in this episode is for selecting one of the two transmitting antennas. The switch should be set so that the polarization of the module's antenna matches the polarization of the antennas in the other devices operating in the system. In practice, this means that it is always worth checking both settings one by one to see which antenna provides better communication with the wireless devices registered in the ACU module. In addition, I'd like to remind you that sometimes changing the mounting location, that is, moving the device even just a few or a dozen centimeters, can significantly improve the quality of radio communication. This applies to both the position of the controller and other wireless devices. Let's now turn to the program and settings of the controller itself. In the previous episode, we identified the connected modules. Both keypads and the ACU 220 controller were identified. After opening the Hardware tab, we can see the wireless module at the last position. For distinction, it is marked with the antenna symbol. You can also see the model of the device. Admittedly, it is displayed here as ACU 280, but we'll talk about that in a moment. We click to enter its settings. Within the box, we again see the module designation. In the case of the PERFECTA 64M control panel, both controllers of the ABAX 2 system, namely both ACU 220 and ACU 280, are identified exactly as ACU 280. This is why the name is displayed even though we are using the bigger module. On the right, we'll check the firmware version. Let me remind you that when configuring devices, it is always worth ensuring that they are updated to the latest versions. Next to this, you can see the address number of the device. And now attention please. When connected to the PERFECTA 64M control panel and identified, the ABAX 2 system controllers are given address 8 by default. Why is it important to remember this? I'm explaining this right now. It may happen that when building your system, you'll want to use more wired detectors than the number of zones available on the PERFECTA 64M control panel electronics board. And there are exactly 8 of these. Therefore, it will be necessary to use INTE wired zone expansion modules. You can connect up to 7 of these modules to the control panel. 8 zones on the board plus 7 zone expansion modules with 8 zones each, giving a total of 64. That is exactly the maximum that this control panel can handle. According to the table displayed, they can be given addresses from 8 to 14. So let's assume that one of the INTE zone expansion modules has indeed been assigned address 8. When in such a situation we want to expand the system with ABAX 2 devices, a problem will arise. When one of the ACU controllers is connected to the control panel, the identification attempt ends up in failure. Obviously, a similar situation will occur if a wireless system controller is first identified in the system, and then we try to add a wired zone expansion module with address 8. This is because an address conflict will occur between the wired zone expansion module and the ABAX 2 controller. So, if we don't intend to use more than 56 wired detectors in the system, it is best to start addressing the INTE zone expansion modules from number 9. This leaves address 8 for the ABAX 2 wireless system controller. By the way, in the table we can see exactly which zones will be supported by zone expansion modules with the specified addresses. Well, alright, let's return to PERFECTA Soft and the controller settings. A little higher up, as well as on the left-hand side of the menu, you will see the default module name. As can be seen, it starts with INTE. This is because, at first, the ACU, similarly to the wired zone expansion module, uses only 8 zones assigned to address 8 mentioned earlier. So we're talking about zones from 9 to 16. And the other part of the default name refers to this address. but written in the hexadecimal format. Let's get back to the program. Below the information on the type, version, and address of the device, we can select the communication period we are interested in. The time set here shows at what frequency the devices will report to the controller. This will be a global parameter for all ABAX 2 devices registered in this system. This will only be different for devices with the ECO option marked in the table below. For them, the communication period will be 3 minutes. So it is important to remember that, as a general rule, the shorter the intervals in this communication, the faster the batteries of the individual wireless devices will run out. In addition, we can tick boxes with which we disable jamming detection, as well as the automatic wireless devices firmware update option. Here, I remind you that in ABAX 2, the All Devices update will start after updating the firmware of the controller itself. It is this module that automatically distributes the latest firmware to other devices. Now let's have a look at the table below. If we want to add a device to the system, such as a detector, siren, controller, or expansion module, we will be able to do so here. Let's click the plus button, and now we'll add the AOCD 260 detector as a test. We will specify a zone outside the first group of 8 wireless zones, that is, with a number higher than 16. So let's select 17. We enter the detector's serial number and confirm it. We'll now save it in the controller. The program reminds you to perform modules identification. So we click on the Detect Connected Modules. Now we can see that 4 modules have been found. This is even though previously there were only 3. That is 2 keypads and a controller. What does it mean? Let's read out the data to check. In the hardware list on the left, the item INTE 0x09 has appeared, which could correspond to a zone expansion module with address 9. The antenna symbol can also be seen, which means that wireless zones are involved. Let's open the Hardware tab. Here you can see a tile described precisely as wireless zones. Let's click on it. And now you can see a list of another 8 zones, which have been reserved in the control panel by the ACU module for another 8 wireless devices. This is because the ACU uses groups of 8 to occupy successive positions on the control panel. As is the case with the wired zone expansion module, we'll add another detector, but this time we'll try to place it somewhere in the middle of the next group. Let it be zone number 29. The detector is added. Writing into the controller. Modules detection. This time, 5 modules have already been identified. Data read out from the control panel. Just as we expected, another group has emerged. Listed as wireless zones, this time with address 10. And here is an important point. If, in turn, we'd add a wired zone expansion module with the next address, namely 11 to the control panel, then, as a consequence, the next group of wireless devices could be opened at address 12. Of course, we don't recommend adding wireless devices in the way just shown. That is, completely out of sequence. This presentation was for illustrative purposes only, to introduce the idea of reserving zones in groups of 8. When creating a real system, it is a good idea to take care of the order of devices and addresses, so as to avoid possible problems in setting it up. On the other hand, if we add devices thoughtfully, we can reserve zones in advance for further equipment to be added to the system at a later date, for example. I also have to point out that there are devices that use zones and outputs at the same time, such as zones, outputs, expansion modules, controllers, or wireless sirens. When adding them, it is important to take into account not only the number of zones, but also of outputs. This is to avoid possible address conflicts with previously added both zones or outputs expansion modules. And that's all in this episode. We'll tell you more about the PERFECTA 64M control panel and ABAX 2 devices another time. Thank you, and enjoy future episodes of the E Academy. See you then!